Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. To start off, I'm using a masking tape to protect the middle spine of my book. This is to prevent potential leakages that could ruin my other completed spreads. For the background, I plan to use this napkin I got off Daiso. Gotta trim it a bit. Using my PVA glue, I'll dab some onto one side of the spread first. I'll also dab some glue on top, then spreading it with a wet brush to create a decoupage effect. Speed drying with my heat gun. Now with my gesso, I'll give the spread a watery wash. I'll be using this teal acrylic paint by Folk Art. Be using my baby wipe with this. I'll also be using this maroon color by the same brand. At this point, I really had no idea how and where exactly I want to color this. Here I have a rubber stamp that I'd carved myself. It's a doodle pattern I tried to imitate from Art by Marlene. Using that leftover maroon paint, I'm going to apply it on the stamp. Next, I'll be using this stencil that I cut using my Cricut machine. If you can catch the light there. I'll be using this black acrylic paint by Daiso, mixing a bit to that remaining maroon paint. I'm using it with this old dabber by Daiso. I need to top up some more black. Cleaning my stencil first. then my palette. I'll be using my black ink pad by Sketchbook. Edging the bottom and the top right corner a bit. Now with the black on my watercolor set, I'll give the spread some splatters. Here's an old star set stencil by a brand called Plate. Also here are some leftover scraps of pink pattern papers. So that's still a little bit too big for my paper. Let's use the second largest star from that. I'll also trace some smaller size stars. Next thing to do, cut them all out. Here are them all. I'll test out the placement first. Quite happy with the positions, I'll go ahead to trace the shapes of each star with pencil first to act as their placeholders. After that first star, I decided to trace by flipping the cutouts upside down to not ruin the front pattern. Once done, I'll put away these stars first. Now with the same black on my watercolor set, I'll give some watery strokes on the bottom of each star. Now with my water spray bottle, I'll make those black strokes drip down. Drying them up a bit. An old bottle of gold poster paint I have. Gonna reactivate it again with that other end of my used ice cream stick. Taking a bit of that paint, I'll do the same to the bottoms of those stars, acting as a second layer of color drips. I'll add more gold as I deem like it. With that, I'm using the leftover gold for some splatters. Once dried, I'll use this matte medium to paste down those stars back into their placeholders. My apologies for my head again. I had a little trouble finding the pencil markings. And that's the last star. Once dried, I'm adding some watery wash to the pink stars, making them belong. Now, using a black gel pen, I'll doodle some tiny little black stars in addition to those existing black splatters. Just something extra. Here's my bottle of black acrylic ink by Speedball. Taking a dab of the ink onto my palette, with a damp paintbrush, I'll use the ink to give each star a thick, messy outline. Here I'd attempted to use my water spray to spread whatever ink that's still wet. But this acrylic ink dries quite fast, so only a shadow of the inks got affected. Unsatisfied, I dabbed a bit more black under each of those stars for a bit more shadow. Then went ahead with the spray again. In the middle of that drying, I'd also added more black shadows as I dimmed right. Now with that used ice cream stick, I try to dab that dipped end onto my top corner to make a 3-bar pattern. As well at the bottom there. Here's a bunch of quotes I printed using my inkjet printer in either black or white backgrounds. I've chosen the quote, "You glow differently when you're actually happy." I'll cut it into 4 parts. For the coat that's pasted onto the middle spine, I'll try to flatten it from the back page so it sticks properly. Using my matte medium again, I'll secure those quote stickers down. Now, time to trim off all those napkin edges. Placing a cutting mat in between those rough papers, I'll use a ruler and pen knife, running along the edges again and again. I'll do the same to the rest of the sides. Using my rounded corner puncher, I'll trim off all the 4 corners. And I call that done. I quite like how the spread ended up. To me, it looks like drifting stars on a night river. So thank you guys for watching. Happy journaling and bye.